Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and guys, thank you so much for all the support and how far this channel has come to see it past 5K and hopefully to see it grow even more. Now, today I want to thank Womier because they sent me out their SK71 Pro. Now, I know that people in the comments were asking about it and wanted me to review it compared to, say, some of the other 75% boards that I've tried. So let's go straight into unboxing, and please make sure to like and subscribe. So starting off with the unboxing of Womier SK71 Pro. Thank you again, Womier, for sending me this out. Now, this board is 75% board, and of course we're going to take a look to see how does it compare to all the other 75% boards that I've tried. Now, looking at the accessories box, the cable is a very bare minimum cable. Gonna be honest with you guys, it's nothing like special, like braided or coiled, just a very basic cable, extra switches, and a keycap puller and switch puller. Now, putting that aside, we're of course going to have to take a look inside the box to see what we're getting with this board. So let's take a look. First, the actual manual. So you get two different ones. You get the shortcuts and then you get a manual, which is really nice to see. The box itself was actually pretty decent too, considering the fact that this is supposed to be a little bit more budget, but we are getting a very decent packaging from this board. Now, taking a look, this board is actually pretty decently made. Right, looking at it, it looks really nice and clean. Gotta admit, like, the design itself was really nice. It did feel incredibly light though, surprisingly. I was trying to take a look to see if it was a quick release or not, and as you can see here on the top right, that is where it's going to be a badge, and actually it's hiding the switch as well as the USB dongle. Now, it is an aluminum board, so that is pretty interesting to see that it is aluminum and feeling quite light. So let's take a look at what it weighs before we go into an actual sound test, and it weighs about 1.3 kilos. Now that we've done the sound tests, of course, we're going to take a look at doing a teardown of this board. Now, as you can see here, there is a little bit of an issue where the switches are a bit loose on this board. Something I noticed, it does kind of pull out the switches really easily when you're pulling up the keycaps. Now, as you can see there, it is a flex cut PC plate. So it is a PC plate and it is flex cut, and you'll see that it is cut there. Now, of course, you're going to have to unscrew these screws to open it. First, let me just get all the keycaps back in, and then we're going to go around and unscrew it. And it's going to be a total of 8 screws to be able to remove the back and the whole casing of this board. Now, as we're going to see in this board, as we take it out, is the top lid. So that is the top part of the case itself. And as you can see here, so the bottom is about 8.4 millimeters in terms of thickness, like 8 on the top side. Of course, you know, we're trying to measure to see how thick the whole top casing is. Just there, the top badge came off. But yeah, 8.4, 8.5 is going to be the top ends, and then 5.4 on the sides. So pretty decent thickness in terms of the top. But one thing I did notice was that it is plastic based. So the small, like, thin layer outside is metal as the actual aluminum, and then the inside edges are actually all plastic, which kind of is answering the question of why it was so light. Because 1.3 kilos for an aluminum board is actually not heavy. To be honest, it is on the lighter side, and I've seen plastic boards weigh about that much. Now, as you can see there, we're going to have to take a look at the actual stabilizers as well. So it is plate mounted stabilizers, and of course we're going to try to take a look to see if it is pre-lubed, and I did notice that they were actually pre-lubed. There's not a ton of lube in there, but there is some lube in there making it pre-lubed, and during the sound test I did notice that it didn't have that much of a rattling sound. Now, in terms of the PC PCB. I don't see the actual flex cuts on the PCB, which is kind of interesting when the plate itself is flex cut. Now, as you can see, both are 1.2 millimeters. So you're looking at a 1.2 millimeter plate and a 1.2 millimeter PCB. Now, with the whole board itself, the bottom is actually aluminum, and we're actually going to have to take it apart to see inside. And one thing you also know is because it's gasket mounted, you will see that there's those nubs that does help with the, dampening of the board. Now, taking it apart, I thought this bottom piece right there was actually a weight, but it's not. It's actually a plastic piece. So it is not a weight. So I need one that was thinking that, oh, that's like a cool weight. Nope, it is just a plastic piece, a plastic cover for the batteries. It is a total of 8,000 milliamp hours, which is a pretty good battery size for this board. Now, we are going to do a sound test with there's no foam at all. Now that we've done the no foam sound test, which actually sounded pretty good, but a little bit clackier, let's actually do the mods. Now, what mod am I going to do is just a tape mod, because there really is not a lot of space. The bottom plate itself for the case is actually quite flat. So there isn't actually a lot of space to work with, especially when you add the foam as well. And as you can see, once you do it, it's like fully flat. You're really getting not a lot of space. Now, one thing I'm going to do is also modify the spacebar itself. I'm only going to use regular tape because I found that the spacebar didn't actually have a lot of hollow sounds, which is really good. And then we're going to do a sound test. Now, we've done the sound test, we've done the teardown and everything so far. So one thing to note that I've noticed while tearing this apart is the fact that the board, yes, it is an aluminum case for most of the board, right? Like the outer sides and like the top casing, the bottom housing, like the bottom casing is definitely interesting in the fact that it is aluminum. But the thing is, though, there is a lot of plastic parts inside this board. So that's something I've definitely kept the eye on for this one because, a lot of things, and like I've seen other reviews saying like, oh, it's a great board. It definitely feels good, right? The metal and aluminum feels really great for the CNC. It's just that it does have a lot of plastic parts to it. So it's not like it's built out of very, very premium materials, but it's made out of pretty good materials in total. Now, in terms of sound profile, does sound really, really good actually. So really interesting with the Thocky sound. Really think that Womier did a great job in terms of the sound and making the switches really nice. Like you're getting premium Thock for it. But the switches are kind of heavy feeling, right? It does give you a little bit more of a finger fatigue in terms of typing. Gaming wise, honestly found it really, really difficult for these switches. So it's going to be interesting to see more in depth, but of course we're going to have to go into it, take a look at the software and more information of the Switch as well as comparing it with the other boards. So let's get straight into that. So going into more of an in-depth look of the Womier SK71 Pro. The board itself was pretty good. It actually has the USB dongle space available, which is really nice to see. I mean, some people are going to want a volume knob, so if you are someone that wants a volume knob, unfortunately this doesn't have it, and this probably is not going to be the best for you. I personally like this layout because there is a right alt key, and in terms of the whole build itself, the CNC is actually really smooth in terms of the aluminum, but it's only the aluminum parts. So a lot of this board is actually plastic based. The inner side is mostly plastic, especially the top and the bottom so-called weight. The weight is actually a plastic piece as well. So that's the reason why this board feels quite light. And in terms of portability, it is actually going to be much better for you, right? A much lighter aluminum build means that it is quite durable, but at the same time, very portable. Now, one thing I noticed about these switches, though, the Panda switches, were a bit heavy, right? They felt quite heavy to type on. I did feel like there was a little bit of finger fatigue, and for gaming, I'm gonna be honest, it's not so great. Now, the thing I noticed about the actual badge itself is that the switches actually underneath there for the like wireless and Bluetooth, which is actually pretty interesting to see. So most of the times you see like the switches on the top end, right, of the board. This one was interesting to see that they actually put it underneath the badge instead, and that is kind of something that a lot of the other companies could do if they were doing no volume knob. But if you're doing a volume knob, I definitely can see like they should be looking at something else. Now, this is the Panda switch that they sent me. It's a linear switch from the Womier that is part of this series. There are other switches as well. I personally didn't really like these switches in terms of the feel. They really don't have that much step mobile though, so that was something that was quite impressive for myself, is to see that Womier didn't actually make a switch that had a lot of stem mobile and was pretty decent. I mean, you do get some, right, but it's not that bad. It's really very minimal stem mobile, unless you're someone that's very sensitive to stem mobile. As you can see, like I'm really pushing on it and like really moving it around, but it was not crazy stem mobile, say like some other switches out there. For example, the Wuchi Studio Mirandis. These do kind of feel tactile in a way. They feel very heavy. That was one of the things I noticed, was they do feel very, very heavy. There's almost like a tactile bump in terms of how the linear switch is. Like I know the actuation point where the actual back of the stem hits the metal pins is going to be almost like a tactile feel. It is quite heavy. And if you are a gamer, it's not going to work really well for you, because, for example, when I play Apex and I'm trying to press like one key after another really quickly, I felt that these switches kind of lagged behind in terms of that, because of how heavy they were and in terms of the actuation points. This is not going to be a switch that works really well for gaming. If I were you, I'd probably choose one of the switches that's a little bit lighter on the linear side, because yeah, this one, it just didn't feel smooth. It didn't feel great for gaming purposes. Typing wise, it was great. Sound wise, super good, like super thocky. But for gaming wise, not the best switch for sure. And now, of course, I do want to give you guys a backlighting test. So going in, one thing I did notice is the backlighting on this board is not super bright. To be honest, it's a little bit on the dim side, and as you can see when they're going through it, it is quite dim. It's not like the brightest keyboard. You have to see it from like a certain angle. Of course, keep in mind that because I'm doing this all on a camera, it's not catching the light as bright as, say, you would with your eyes. Human eyes will definitely catch the light a lot brighter than a camera will. And as you can see on my camera, it is very dim. In person, you will see the lighting, but the lighting will be a lot darker. So that is something you're going to have to keep in mind for yourselves, that it's not going to be as bright as, say, some other boards out there, even though these switches do have a light diffuser. And this was at the max brightness. They weren't super bright. One thing really cool though is you do have this lighting on the back of the board, and it does come through, and when you have the lights off, it does shine through. Now, going onto the website, as you can see here, the board itself and the price itself, right, it does show right now for 128 Canadian. So that, and actually in USD, it's supposed to be $90. You do have choices of an FR4 plate if you want to, so you can actually purchase it with an ISO plate or an ANSI, which is a really nice upgrade, right? For those that are wanting to use a ISO plate, definitely they have this option available for you. And you see the information there with the 8,000 milliamp hour battery, and 1,000 hertz wired, USB Type C, works with Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. So you do get all the different choices for this. It's also VIA compatible, which I'll show you soon. And honestly, gotta admit, like for the price that you're paying at 90 USD, definitely a great build, right? Compared to, say, some other boards out there. Recently, I did one that was the Inky 75. That was supposed to be really cheap, right? That was like a $70 build. This one's only $20 more for $90. And it's still under the 100 USD point, and it's got really great sound of Thock. But it is a much lighter board. And of course, this is how you download it. You just click on the downloads via configure, and boom, you get it. You go into design, load, make sure your JSON file is saved in there, and then just load it, and bam, you got it. Really nice thing to see that they are using VIA instead of their own like custom software, that they're not really going to put more effort into customizing and making it easier. No, instead they're actually going to do something more simple. And I was just doing the brightness test to see, so to make sure that it was fully bright in terms of the board when I was doing the backlight testing there. And yes, I was using the full brightness. Definitely a little bit brighter once I touched it up a little bit on the VIA. So keep that in mind. With using the keyboard inspector, we can also see that it is 1,000 polling rate. So that is really decent to see, right? It's going to be perfect for gaming, but I would again suggest a lighter switch than the one that was provided. Now, we're going to want to do a sound test comparison with the SK71 Pro compared to, say, some of the other aluminum 75% out there that I've personally tried, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts after. So what are my thoughts? I would put this at a pretty decent range. The fact is, it is a lot more portable than the other boards out there. The NK75 was at like 2.2, 2.3 kilos, while the Womier is at 1.3. It is a much lighter board. It still comes with a really nice Thock. I would, again, say don't go with the Panda switches unless you don't play video games and you're okay with a heavier feel, as well as a little bit of like a tactile-ish feel on a linear switch. If you are someone that wants to play video games with it as well, I would suggest choosing a different switch, one of their lighter ones for sure, because the Panda Palm is a little bit heavy for gaming. I would say for $90, it is a decent grab. Honestly, it is really decent compared to, say, like the Rainy 75, as well as the Blade 75 and the ND 75. I will have the links in the description for you guys. I would suggest taking a look if you're looking for something that's under the $100 range. Now, we've done the comparisons with the other keyboards, and the sound profiles of this one is actually quite thocky. The Womier is really nice in terms of the sound. The feel of the outer shell of the board does feel premium, even though the back, as I said here, is a plastic and not a weight. It does feel premium on the other sides of it, right? Like the aluminum parts do feel good. The CNC was well done. I would say that if you're looking for something a little bit more portable that is with an aluminum casing, this is definitely one to look at because, as I said, this is pretty light. It actually is in the weight range of like a heavier plastic build, which is quite interesting when you think about it. And If you're a gamer though, I'm not going to really say this is the best suggestion for you with this specific switches. I would try the other switches that are lighter. This one, it just feels a little bit too tactile in a way. Even though it's a linear switch, it does feel tactile, it does feel heavy. And sometimes when I'm trying to do like super gliding in Apex, pressing 2 keys, I also notice that there's a little bit of a latency, like delay in it from the switches specifically. Using other switches in the sport was fine. It's just these switches specifically, it did have that little bit of a weird input thing, and then it wouldn't actually press. So keep that in mind for gamers out there that really are needing something that can do that with like quick actuations. I would look at maybe different switches on this board. So I'll have the links in the description for you guys, and please go check out the other videos I got, and I'll catch you guys all next time.